Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Hello.
My name is Elizabeth Pena. I am the director of the Center for the Arts and Religion at the Graduate Theological Union. And as such, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's event in conjunction with our ongoing exhibition, Art Window. So CARE, the Center for the Arts and Religion, is an academic center of the Graduate Theological Union. We have exhibitions in our gallery, or we would be in our gallery if we didn't have a pandemic, but and now we're doing exhibitions online mostly. And we also do events. We support students with grants for research relating to the arts. And we serve sort of as a community hub about the arts. Now that because of the pandemic, because we've been solely online, we're doing exhibitions online, activities online, trying to find ways to form community in the arts online. And we thought about making use of our window. Since we can't come in the gallery, maybe we could do something outside of the gallery. So we have a little window, and we decided that we could put art in the window, and we could all come and look at the art from outside, staying safe. And so we've done that, and we decided to try to feature a different artist every month. And we were inspired by, everything that happened in that earlier phase of the pandemic, when we had the murder of George Floyd, followed by so many others, and the sort of realization of by many people of the ongoing and long existing institutional racism and police brutality that had been going on in this country. And we really wanted to feature art that was about social justice in some way or another, interpreted in many different ways. And we were really hoping to feature predominantly artists of color, to give that sort of voice to our exhibitions. And so that's what's behind our Art Window series, which will be continuing through the spring, featuring different artists. But we're really excited to bring the 3 artists that have been featured so far together here today. So in a few minutes, Lydia Webster, you want to just give a little wave, who is the associate curator at the Center for the Arts and Religion, will be introducing each artist and leading a panel discussion with these artists. So I'll be throwing it over to her in a minute. First, I want to thank our committee. I don't know if any of them are here today, but they could wave a hand if they are. The committee that has helped select the artists. And I'm talking about Dr. Johanna Juncker, who is a recent PhD graduate of the Graduate Theological Union and is now at the Claremont School of Theology. The Reverend Kiana Lazenby, who is a PhD student at the Graduate Theological Union, and Dr. Valerie Miles Tribble, who is a faculty member at the Graduate Theological Union and the Berkeley School of Theology. Dr. Miles Tribble is also the chair of the Women's Studies and Religion Steering Committee, which is, I'm happy to say, a co-sponsor of this event. And to say a little bit more about the Women's Studies and Religion group, I will hand this over to Cheryl Johnson, who is the group's coordinator. Cheryl, do you want to say a few words about WSR?
Of course. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you for the warm welcome, and so excited to hear from tonight's artists. I think it's wonderful too that we're lifting up these important themes, and also female and women identified artists. So thank you so much for this opportunity. The Women's Studies in Religion program is a project that exists within the Graduate Theological Union. We offer a variety of lectures, conferences, opportunities for students to present their papers, and to just, be a supportive community within the Graduate Theological Union. We also offer a certificate that students can complete alongside whatever degree program they might be enrolled in. So I'll just pause there, but if you're interested, I'll put my email in the chat, and I'd be happy to speak further with you and to add you to our mailing list. So thank you so much for this opportunity to co-sponsor, and really looking forward to tonight's event.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much, Elizabeth and Cheryl, for those words of introduction. As Elizabeth said, my name's Lydia Webster, and I am the Associate Curator at the Center for the Arts and Religion at the Graduate Theological Union here in Berkeley. I do want to just briefly introduce each of our three artists that we have on our panel today before giving them a chance to share a little bit more about their work. And then we'll move to the panel part of tonight and ask some more in-depth questions. So our first artist, whose work we displayed way back in October of last year, is Ora Clay, who grew up in Alabama, where she remembers her mother sewing quilts to keep her and her siblings warm in the winter. After retirement as a children's librarian, Ora began the second part of her life as a textile artist, becoming apprenticed to master quilt maker Marion Coleman. Ora uses photographs, popular block patterns, and her own designs to tell stories and address issues of social justice. Our second artist, Elizabeth Jimenez Montelongo, is a visual artist, poet, and teacher in the San Francisco Bay Area. She has exhibited her artwork in over 50 exhibitions across the US. Her poetry is published in various literary journals and anthologies. Her visual and poetic work is influenced by her roots as an indigenous Mexican Chicana in the United States. And she is also the 2021 Creative Ambassador for the San Jose Office of Cultural Affairs. And finally, our third artist, Shirin Khalatbari, who is currently on display in Art Window, is an interdisciplinary artist from Iran who's currently based in Oakland. Sheeran recently received her MFA from San Francisco State University and holds her MA in archaeology from the University of Rome. Sheeran's work confronts the entropy of memory and history, and we were fortunate enough to display her piece Tower of Babel in CARE's MFA Show 2, which we held back in 2019. So I'd love to first give our three artists a chance to introduce their work. Starting with Ora, if you will, could you each give us a little bit of a snapshot into your art?
Thanks, Cheryl. Can I share my screen, please? Did she say I could share?
She's just muted.
Ora, I think you should be able to do that yourself. If you look at the bottom, there should be a green button. Oh yeah, you've got it. Brilliant.
Okay. Can you see it?
Can they see it?
Can you see my screen?
We can't see it as yet. It seems to still be loading.
Okay, it should load in a minute. It says I'm sharing. Sharing is paused. Why is it paused here? Resume share.
Let's just start it over.
Okay, we're going to start it over and share again.
Okay, thank you, Ora.
Yes. And tell me when it's sharing because,
It is Sharon. I can
Okay.
see it.
okay. So can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm a member of the African American Quilting Guild of Oakland. And when I heard about this announcement, I thought, what a great idea. So I'm going to talk to you about the two quilts that I had in the art window. This first quilt is titled Article 29, Responsibility. And there are 30 articles in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And number 29 talks about the duty to care for other people and protect their rights and freedoms. So my theme is responsibility. We have to ensure that all people have access to clean water. This quilt is 50 inches by 50 inches. It's done in shades of blue to give you the feeling of water. I learned about responsibility at an early age because I'm the oldest of 6. And when my parents left home, I was left in charge. So that meant I was responsible for taking care of them, making sure they had what they needed until my parents returned. Now, my sisters and brothers may have a different interpretation of this. In fact, they may even use the word bossy. In this book by Dr. Carolyn Maslumi, there are quilts that illustrates each of these 30 human rights, and each quilter gives their interpretation and inspiration for their quilt. So my quilt is included in this book. Number 29, Article 29 points out our responsibility to others. And it goes beyond just the people we're close to, not just our sisters and brothers or the people we know, but also others. And in this picture, you see the older child is helping a younger child with a drink of water. Clean water is quilted on the can. And it could be a brother, it could be a stranger, but we are responsible for others also. I often include words and often quotations in my quilts. Dr. King says, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Words are powerful, whether they are written or whether they're spoken, like Amanda Corman spoke yesterday. In this picture of the water tower, it has the name Flint on it, so it gives us a place of reference for what we're talking about. And the water flowing from the towers to the homes shows us the yellow water that's represented, the lead contaminated water that was going from the tower to the houses. A local physician, Dr. Mona Hana Atisha, demonstrated her responsibility by exposing the fact that the lead contaminated water delivered to the homes would adversely affect children for years to come. The officials in Flint did not exercise responsible behavior. They did not protect the residents. They did not fix the contaminated water problem, but they ordered clean bottled water for their offices. In the New York Times, it said the former governor of Michigan said he bears no criminal responsibility for the Flint water crisis. But since then, he and several of his colleagues have been criminally charged. Again, I quote Dr. King, every person must decide at some point whether they will walk in the light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. Light and darkness leads me to my second quilt. In 2018, there was a call to celebrate Dr. King's birthday. And there's a sermon that he preached over 60 years ago. It's based on a parable, a knock at midnight. A man is knocking on the door of his neighbor and he's asking for bread for his friend. Dr. King used this parable to preach about the dark midnight conditions of the world. He said there was midnight and darkness socially, how we get along in the world. There's midnight and darkness in our individual lives, and our emotional well-being. And there's midnight and darkness when we think of our morals and what we believe in and act on. This quilt shows a contrast between light and darkness that he talked about. This sermon was delivered over 60 years ago, but is still relevant today. However, Dr. King concluded that despite the current state of the world, there is the bread of faith, hope, and peace. We see this in the lighted room. On the table, there are loaves of bread in the basket, and I've also added the bread of economic justice and racial equity. On the midnight side, there's free motion quilting with metallic thread to add some stars to this dark side. As an art quilter, I like the process of choosing just the right fabric to complete the story. The major part of this door looks like bamboo. The panel is a rich silk fabric. The carpet is batik. And the table is a cotton fabric that looks like stainless steel. This quilt poses the question, how do we respond when someone is asking for help? As a people, we're asking for the symbolic loaves of bread. It can be in many forms, such as asking just to be treated with dignity. Hopefully, as a people, we will reject the darkness and embrace the light. The theme from yesterday seemed to be from the darkness of the last 4 years into the light So this sermon is just as relevant today as it was 60 years ago. Thank you for letting me share my art.
Thank you so much, Ora, for that insight into your work that you showed with us. It's really fantastic, and I know we're all excited to learn more about it in a bit. Elizabeth Jimenez Montelongo, I'd love to invite you next to share a little bit about your work.
Sure. Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Ora, for sharing about your beautiful artwork and that lovely presentation. I'm going to share my screen to my my website so I can show an overview of my artwork. And can you let me know when you can see it? Is it showing?
Yep, looks like it's working.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to give an overview of my artwork, starting with the style of artwork that I had hanging in the, or showing in the art window. So that was work from my series, A Euphoric Dance of the Unconquered Mind. And so I'm going to flip through some pictures while I tell you about it. I started this series about 10 years ago, and the images are Aztec dancers from the Bay Area. We call them Mexica dancers. Most people know them as Aztec dancers. And I think this, the dance really inspired me because it's part of my heritage. And I hadn't learned much about my indigenous heritage growing up. It was like a long journey to learn more about like Mexican Chicano history through classes in college, and then through people I met in the community that had more knowledge of like our indigenous roots. My family's from Mexico, and there were a lot of things growing up that I didn't understand. Like for example, I was when I started school, I didn't speak English, and it's something like that I noticed as a child, but I didn't really like think of consciously even enough to ask questions of like why is school all in English and why don't I speak English? And just seeing, like people in my family, like, like the way that they worked and things that they had, and then the things that other people would share, like oh, our family owns like this much land and this many acres, and I didn't even know what acres were. And it was just, I don't know, these are things I think about sometimes when I share about my art. So when I started learning about this like Mexican history, Chicano history, and our indigenous roots, it really just fascinated me to know like where my where my ancestors came from, and to still have like all this heritage from a long time ago, like people that are still practicing native traditional dances in Mexico and other other countries south of the border, because long ago we didn't have all these borders, so there wasn't a Mexico. So all like Mesoamerica, there's still all these traditional dance ceremonies, and very, very spiritual, and so I enjoyed learning about them. And for those of you that we may or may not have participated or witnessed these like dances and ceremonies, but they're very very colorful, and there's like drums, a lot of movement, and so it's a very like sensory experience. And so that's what I started painting in this series, trying to capture like that movement and color. And there's a lot of movement in the way I paint. I would take the pictures myself as the dancers were dancing, so a lot of the pictures that I used were just like really blurry, like movement kind of pictures. Especially when I started, it was like an older camera. But I like that, like the blur, I could see like the movement in the dances. And so I also paint with oil paint and a palette knife. So it's not like careful brush strokes. It's more of like, you know, a lot of movement, like with a knife all over the canvas, and try to capture that color. So I showed 2 of these in the art window. This one, the mujer, woman, and this piece. And then I'll share some of my other work. So another thing I wanted to mention is that I really like to use like imagery from like indigenous kind of imagery, not just because it's in my heritage, but also I like to like share that with people because as in my own experience, I know a lot of people with indigenous heritage like aren't aware of it. Like we don't, you know, a lot of us like at some point don't really know like where we come from, like where our ancestors come from. And also just in general, like some people aren't really aware that there are still so many like indigenous people, like, you know, we're still here. Also like indigenous people that trace their roots back to like this part of the continent. In the United States, like, you know, Native people are still here, and so it's important to just bring awareness to that. And just in my case, I like to just learn about my roots. This is another series of work called Transformación, Transformation, and it's a sculpture. In this work, it's like a little bit inspired by the ancient painted books known as codices. So there were you know, hundreds, thousands of books, and most of them unfortunately were burned by the Spaniards. And there are only, I think, about 15 that are like authentic. And we see a lot of pictures um, from these codices, these books that were actually painted after European contact. So those are very different. But I like to look at like the pre-contact authentic books, and I take some of the imagery from there and just mix it with like concepts from indigenous worldview and just my own, you know, my own thoughts and just the way I see things. So I'm gonna combine that and create these images. And these are mixed media work on wood, mostly acrylic and ink, and sometimes a bit of other media. So let's flip through a few of those. So some of them look a little more like related to the ancient books, and some are just, sometimes I just get ideas. Sometimes I just, I think we're gonna talk about this later in the questions, but sometimes I just like it, like an image in my head, and I'll just paint it. Like I'll draw it and paint it out. And sometimes I have like a certain meaning. Like this was inspired by a painting by Frida Kahlo. So this is just very different from my oil painting series. And I'll give a very quick peek because I think I'm about out of time. I'll give a quick peek of my alebrije sculptures. So alebrijes are, if you haven't heard of them, they're like hybrid creatures, and it's a tradition from Oaxaca, Mexico. So they're traditionally more colorful, like they're like every part's like a different color with textures, but I do them like my own style. But they're originally from Oaxaca. The Linares family started this style of like these alebrije hybrid animals, and they're made, it's cartoneria, it's what's known as paper mache. But it's not a paper clay, it's like a structure with layers of paper. And I paint mine with acrylic and inks. So just a few examples. And I think that's about all I'm going to share for now. Thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you, Elizabeth, so much. It was wonderful to see all those different media you use as well. It's cool that we get to see that, even though we weren't able to show it in the exhibition. So thank you. Our final artist, Shirin Khalatbari, I'd love to invite you to give a little bit of insight into your work if you'd like.
Hello. Thank you, Lydia and Elizabeth, for organizing this. I'm gonna share. Okay, I'm gonna share my website first with you. I'm not gonna talk about all the works here, but just to give you a glimpse of my work. My work is change form all the time. I think like that's partly because that I'm like, except my MFA, I don't have a traditional art education. I've been archaeologist for a long time and then decided to become an artist. So I started my MFA. So I do video, I do photography, I do sculpture, I I use whatever medium the work requires to use. But since the work I showed in the art window at CARE is done, it's about refugees and immigration, and I've done it. The material I used is a space blanket. First, I'm going to show you this video. There's a sound. I don't know if you're able to hear the sound or not, but it's just the wave sound. So just imagine ocean sound. And I let the video run and I talk about it. In 2015, are you seeing my screen? In 2015, the body of Alan Kurdi found dead in Mediterranean shore. He was a refugee escaping from Syria, from civil war in Syria, trying to reach Turkey. And the space blanket is a material developed by NASA in 60s to protect space instruments and their satellites in space from harsh weather. But since the refugee crisis in the world, it's been using to keep refugees warm, especially when they take them from water and they've been cold. So the image of Alan Kurdi has been haunting me for a long time. It was so emotional to see that little body just trying to escape for a better life, which he never reached. So I screen printed his image on a space blanket. I used sand to represent the shore he found in, and the blue light is kind of representing the ocean. So it's kind of, in his honor. I made this work in his honor. And then the other work I used, space blanket, is this piece. It is called A Layer for Your Protection. In this, I covered the whole inside of a room, so it's like quite big. It's like 20 feet by 26 feet. It's a small gallery we had in a school, and so these space blanket are kind of very thin foil, so they're conductive. So I attach them all together with a wire, and then I connect the wire to the ground plug. So all the signal, cell phone signal, kind of get jammed. So like in this room, there was no cell phone signal. And I called it A Layer for Your Protection because the country where I come from and many other countries like China or Cuba or Russia, they do what we call filtering the internet, so you cannot access many websites because they're locked, like the government locked them, so you cannot access them. But their reason, their logic behind it is that like this is because this is to protect you. We are trying to protect you not to reach the evil content on the internet. So like they try to make this shiny thing, shiny cage for you, and try to sell it to you as something that is mean to protect you. So let me share these other pictures from the art window. Ooh, okay. So fortunately enough, the work is still up. Because of the reflective quality this material has, it is super difficult to get a good picture, but it's really nice. Well, I shouldn't say it myself, but it looks beautiful when you see it in person. For this work, my original idea was to have the faces of refugees on each block of the window, but I contacted many of them. They don't want their image to be displayed. Many of them is because of their safety. Like there are a lot of Afghan women who escaped their country from different kind of abuse. So like they don't want to put themselves in another trouble. There are many of refugees, they don't want their picture to be displayed because some of them, they're ashamed of it. So they don't want anybody to recognize them. So I had to come up with another solution. And so the refugee crisis is not only limited to Middle East, of course. It's we see it in America border. There've been talk about it all this year. So, but the means, the way that these refugees try to travel is either by the seas or desert. So I've been looking at the satellite images of seas and deserts. So deserts, and I decided to kind of somehow mimic those body of water or land. So why does that's a strange. Okay. So I started using, and then as you can see, the material is shiny, but when you lit it from behind, it's kind of become this transparent. So you can see these little markings. I used ink and water, and I have a few images of the process I can show you. So like this is a detail, but again, it's not as good as in person. But when using ink and water, this is from the process and it's still wet here, but I let the material flow and kind of leave it to the chance, alluding to the way refugees experience their journey. You know, it's full of unknown. You know, you never know what's gonna happen, what is next, if you're gonna make it, if you're not gonna make it. So I wanted to have that trace in my work. And this is like when you're seeing it's getting dry and it's leaving all these marks here, which they kind of represent resemble water and desert. And this is another image of the process. Yeah, I'm really quick in talking. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sheeran. That's fabulous. I saw a great comment in the chat box already that the theme of water is coming up across the three of yours works, so I'm excited we're already having good discussion. I'd love to now turn to the panel part of tonight's panel discussion and ask you some more in-depth questions. So the three of you, please just feel free to jump in and answer in any order. Feels right. So the first question is a hopefully easy one, and I'm curious to know what it was that made all of you interested in being a part of our exhibition, being a part of Art Window.
Well, for me, you know, the art galleries are closed because of COVID. The museums are closed because of COVID. Quilt shows have been canceled. So it's sort of like we don't have the outlet that we used to have. And as I said, I thought it was a great opportunity to be able to share what I've been doing. So I thank you that somebody had the great idea of doing this art window.
Yes, I was also excited to have this opportunity to share my artwork. As Ora said, like everything's closed, and it was great to be able to not only share our work but be able to you know, like right now we're all here because of that opportunity that was arranged for us to share our artwork. So it's a great opportunity to exhibit and just discuss work and have some, you know, something going on art-wise during this pandemic.
Yeah, and I echo with Ora and Elizabeth. Since everything is closed, I was really excited when I see the car. I was like, oh, great. And well, I've been living in Berkeley, so the gallery is happening like in my afternoon walk routine. And I thought it's really good idea because, I mean, if the art is behind the window, there's like the chances like for people who don't regularly go to gallery visit it, and so more people will see it. And it's amazing to give something beautiful to people, to, you know, just like people who are in the neighborhood, to see something in COVID, which is like you don't see anything.
That's great. Thank you to the three of you. I'm delighted it all worked out, you know, and as Elizabeth said at the beginning, Elizabeth Pena, the director of CARE, we have two Elizabeths here today. You know, this really was born out of a need to be creative, and I'm so glad it worked out in this fabulous way. You know, more than just being a need to fill a blank space due to COVID, the show really it does deal with themes of social justice. I think all three of you deal pretty heavily with social inequality and injustices in your work. So I'm curious to know what you think the role of an artist is in shedding light on these issues, particularly as you are all women of color. And I wonder if you feel a special responsibility to represent your community or a particular community.
Well, I'll start. I haven't been quilting long, but when I first started quilting, I worked with a mentor, Marion Coleman, and I was just starting out. So I thought, okay, I'll just do, you know, some fun stuff. I'm a former librarian in elementary school and middle school. So I said, I'll do frogs and toads. And I had fabric with frogs and toads on it. And Marion said to me, nope, we're not doing frogs and toads. We have to tell our story. And I just remember those words from her, that we have to tell our story. And I eventually did the frogs and toads. But in the meantime, you know, it's like we have to give our viewpoint of our lives. And currently there's a show in Minneapolis from the George Floyd incident. And a lot of the quilters are women, but a lot of the women talked about their feelings when he called out to his mother, you know, and it's like, that was just so, I don't know, for the women, that was just so, we just felt that so much. And so many of the quilts reflect that. And as I said, I just think it's part of telling our side of the story. We can't expect someone else to tell our side. So that's how I go about it.
Yeah, I love what Ora shared right now. Thank you. I also like to just address like some social issues. I kind of feel like stay on the surface a little bit in my artwork right now. And my poetry is very different. Like I get very very specific with addressing like social issues, and some people say like my poetry is political. In my artwork, it's not doesn't go that deep. It's more like culture and history based. And I think it still always kind of leads to like discussions about social issues, just because like heritage and history are so tied to social issues that are going on, and people's just experiences of just different life experiences. Like it's very different because of our different like heritage, and just the way the way we see the world, and everything that's happened before us affects kind of like our start in life, or even just our mentality. Like sometimes it's just like in our minds, our like limits of what we can do or what we should do. And so those are kind of thoughts that I like to just kind of like start discussions on, because I think that's one way to help solve like social problems, just by talking about it and just getting people to think about it, like, and share our perspectives, like we are, so other people can see how other people think, other people's just lives and what we go through, and hopefully like we empathize with each other. So that's my experience. Thank you.
Well, I grew up in Iran, and I've been like living there until I was 20, and my life since I remember, it's been like a consistent war with the government, because like women are suppressed in every aspect of their life. So it's just like injustice has been part of my life. And I think, as Elizabeth said and Ora said, part of being an artist is to use our voice to point on these issues however we can. Maybe they don't really solve any problem, but it's important to talk about these problems and be vocal as much as we can through our art. My art, whether I want it or not, has been always political, because I can't really detach myself from my history, from the history of the region where I came from, and the injustice that is just everywhere in the world. So I think it's my responsibility to talk about it whenever I can, and show it in my work.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you all so much for sharing those pretty powerful testimonials. I think, as people are saying in the chat, it really shows in the work that we've seen here today how important it is for you to really, represent issues that you feel strongly about in your communities and your culture. And it's really showing through. We are hurtling towards 6 p.m. So I want to just ask one more question, and then I'll open it up to the floor for some more questions from the audience. But 2020 was an unusual year, to say the least, and it seems like 2021 is shaping up to be no more strange and difficult. So I'm curious to know if your art practice changed in any way. Are you doing things differently than you once were? And do you think any of these changes are going to be permanent things that you adopt into your art practice going forward?
I'll go first this time.
Okay, Elizabeth.
um, well, I don't think my actual like art making has changed very much. I'm still like exploring the same media. I still have more, more to do with that, and working on these series of work. But art's kind of just, it's been different. A lot of like my art education opportunities to like teach art to kids and for programs and stuff that's been put on hold, and I haven't really like transferred that to the virtual format. But I'm going to, now that I see like this isn't going to be over soon. I'm gonna start making that available, like art workshops online, and just connecting with people more for like art and artistic kind of activities online. It's been nice to kind of like expand the people that I can connect with and learn from during the pandemic. So I think that'll remain, like, hopefully for all of us, like we'll also like maybe keep some time to also connect with people that are far away through like virtual settings. Um, that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Well, I have to say that I'm very fortunate because 2019, just before 2020 came, I was fortunate enough to have a sewing studio, a quilting studio built as part of our house. So I have 2 walls of windows, and that has just saved me during this time of COVID, because I can go in there and the outside is right there, and I can do my art, and I can be there all day long. In fact, I forget to eat sometimes, but it's just saved me, and I'm so fortunate. And it's like, if anybody's looking for me, they know where to find me. So that has changed because of COVID, but that will continue, thank goodness. But I also think, since we've been in this pandemic kind of time, it's made us more aware of certain things like family and people who are close to us and appreciating things. I don't think we did enough of that before COVID, or at least I did. So some things will continue, I hope. So, when COVID is over, we'll do some other things, but I think some things we will keep.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to have a home studio, so in that way my art didn't affect a lot. But since there's no event happening and I'm not a very virtual person, I've been really missing all the discussion, going to openings, talking to people, having people coming for studio visits, sharing with them. So that's I've been missing the most. And yeah, I've been laid off from my favorite job, which was a studio technician at CCA. But since everything is online, nobody's coming in the studio to work, so there's no need to studio assistant. So I'm looking forward for the schools to open again, so I can be around students and help them with their creative process. But yeah, I have my home studio, so my practice is going on as usual.
Fantastic. Thank you, Thri. Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is there's a sense of, we really got to reach out to people. Like we miss people so much during the pandemic. I think that's shown me that that's true more than anything. And it's, we got to keep making art. We got to keep talking about things. We got to keep sharing. And I think it's fantastic that you've all been able to keep going with your art practice during these difficult times. So we do have a couple more minutes left. I'd love to open it up to the people we still have in the audience. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and just speak it out. I think that's probably the easiest way to do things.
I see one question in the chat I'm not sure if I'm reading their name right. Farsijana, which is asking from all of us if we have a time frame for a piece of your artwork to finish. For me, that's like mostly depends if I have a deadline or I'm just working on it, because part of my work is experimentation. So I can spend weeks just experimenting and not going anywhere. But also, if I have a deadline, I I can wrap it up in time.
I think for quilters, we often get asked the question, how long does it take to make a quilt?
Right.
And I just say, if I had $1 every time someone asked me that, because there is no time. And I think a writer said, it takes as long as it takes. And, you know, like you said, we work on it and then it's finished. But it's hard to say how long it takes. I always just give people an answer and say 2 months, but maybe longer, maybe shorter.
I have a similar experience. Sometimes it can take a shorter amount of time, like within a week I might finish a painting, depending on the size. It might take a few months, and I might also be working on a few different pieces of artwork over a period of time. So it's not just like one and I'm done and then another. They're just all kind of coming together around the same time. There's been paintings that I leave aside for like a good while and then go back to them. And I don't like keep track of the time as much, but yeah, mostly they've taken like between a week to like, I don't know, 6 weeks, unless I just like really didn't pay attention to it for a while for whatever reason. If I get stuck or something,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen too much, but sometimes they're just like, just something wrong with it, and I have to just take my time away and then go back to it and finish.
And also quilters have a stack called UFOs. They are never finished. So, so sometimes we have to go back to those too.
Well, there you have it. It takes anywhere from between a week to 6 weeks to finish a piece. I think that's
Unfinished.
or yes, or not to finish it, or to decide, well, that's enough. We have a couple more questions in the chat here if people are still interested. A great question from Maria. And I think, Sheeran, we saw this at the beginning in your presentation. Did any of you incorporate sound into your work when you exhibit it?
I do sometimes. Yeah, I made a very disturbing piece. You can see it on my website. I put it in the chat later. That I like used a metronome, and and then the piece I showed you, I used ocean sound in it. I guess that's it, as far as I remember.
I don't use sound, but maybe someday. Like I thought of using like kind of like lights and like things that move, like in sculptures eventually. Like it's all in my head right now, but eventually there might be sound someday in my sculptures. What about you, Ora? Any sound in your quilts? Background.
I have not explored that part of it. No. I think it would be a neat idea though, to try it. Especially on a quilt show, would be great to have some kind of recording, next to a quilt, but I have not done that.
Yeah, that question gives me ideas.
I finally put the link successfully in the chat from the other work that I use sound and light.
So there's another question in the chat. It says, I would like to know at what point in your lives did you know you were a creative artist? Did you have formal training? I am having trouble scrolling on this without losing the message. Oh, or did you start at a young age? That's what it says. I can answer first.
Hey, Elizabeth.
So you can think about it while I answer. I don't know, as long as I can remember, I was always like creative. I always loved to make things. I have memories as a child of, like, I remember specific things I was making. Like, even, I don't know, in kindergarten, things I was like interrupted while I was making, that I was like really into these projects, or things I made at home. So I was always creative, artistic, and I do have some formal training. I have an art degree, a Bachelor of Fine Arts from San Jose State University. So I learned how to use a lot of different media there, and a lot of it's just like experimenting too, like with what I learned or what I liked from what I was able to experience during classes, and just like just using that media and just working more and exploring. And I think that's it for me.
That's
I think.
interesting. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, Sheeran, go ahead. I was first all the time, so go ahead.
It's an interesting question for me because I've been like I've been making things, putting stuff together, paint stuff since I remember, but being an artist never considered a profession in my family, so there was no discussion about I want to be an artist. I couldn't be an artist. It was pretty late. It was November 21st, 2015, when I just like met randomly this Egyptian graffiti artist in Rome, and he randomly invited me to collaborate with him. And I was like, I don't know how to do it. And he was like, just come. And I went with him and I started to do this graffiti. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do it. So I had to wrap up my master's, apply for another master's, and start my art education. So yeah, never too late.
I think too, young children, I worked in schools. So, sort of like we're all artists in our own way. I can remember, when we first got our first box of crayons and all of the colors, and I wanted all of the colors. So I think children, do a lot of art and we don't encourage it enough. My sister's granddaughter is a great artist. AJ, she does everything else, but she also is an artist. As I said, I didn't start quilting until after I retired, but as a librarian and in school, I loved working with the art teacher. So it's like we all come at it from different ways. And I didn't have time to do quilts, but I knew I wanted to do something. So when I retired, it was time to do quilts, and I had the time to do it. So now I consider myself a textile artist. So that's how I came to it.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. We are officially at 6, so I'm going to close out. Thank you to the 3 of you for sharing about you. Oh, what's going on? Elizabeth, everything okay?
Yes, everything's okay. But before, oh, sorry.
We have 2 Elizabeth. Sorry, Elizabeth.
Who were you calling on me?
Yeah, I was calling on you. Yes.
Before you thank our artists, which if I could just say one thing, I mean, I just want to, I'll let Lydia do the main thinking, but I do want to thank you 3 for coming tonight, but also for letting us display your art in the window, which has just been fantastic. And I don't know if probably a lot of you in this Zoom room feel as I do, that just like missing seeing art, missing going to museums and missing that kind of interaction. So, I'm grateful that you're allowing us to provide that, even just for ourselves, to walk by the window and take a moment to reflect and to like just enjoy and think. So I want to thank you three very much for that, and tell everybody to stay tuned for our future art windows. But you can stop by. Shirin's work is right there, right this moment. So, and also I just very much want to express gratitude to Lydia, because she has taken this idea and run with it. And she's the one who's worked with our committee to organize with the artists and make sure the art is shown properly and get all the labels done. And so this is Lydia's project, and she's done a fabulous job, and I want to thank her for that.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. That means a lot. And second, Elizabeth, did you have something you really wanted to quickly also say, or no? Is it too late?
Oh, no. Oh, I had just put in the chat, like, thank you for listening to us and asking us questions. And yeah, hopefully everyone encourages like kids to, do art and express themselves that way, because it's really good for everybody.
Yes, fantastic. That's a great way to close out. Thank you. Please do be in touch with CARE. The new semester is ramping up very soon, and we have a whole bunch of more online events and more artists who'll be displaying in Art Window coming up in the next couple of months. So keep an eye on our website and social media channels, which I'll put in the chat, as well as a whole plethora of other people's information that you're getting right now. So stay in touch with the three fantastic artists that we've heard from today. Stay in touch with us. And we look forward to seeing everyone at some more art-related events in the coming months. So thank you again to everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Take care. Be well. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lydia.
You.
Thanks, Lydia.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Lydia. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Great to see
Thank you,
you.
Elizabeth and Lydia. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Great to see
Bye.
you. Thanks for coming.